Hey, primates! Links to the video we react to today are in the description below. Also, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as hit the little bell to be notified whenever we go live or put out new content. It really helps us out. Thank you so much. Enjoy the show! So, because more than likely, well, here's what's gonna happen soon, and there's actually a pretty good time to do this. I want to set up a day where we pretty much just watch a bunch of episodes of the Fallout TV show from Amazon on Amazon Prime. We can do that on Twitch. I've never done it before. The Twitch watch party. The issue there becomes that only people who have Twitch Prime can watch it alongside with me. So that's a bit of a heads up. You have to be logged into your Twitch. I'm gonna set that up someday in the near future. Until then, though, let's watch some Fallout lore. Starting off with one of the absolute freaking most goated and absolutely horrifying villains, in my opinion, in all of history. The Master. From Fallout 1, my dude. This dude is absolutely wild. And I'm so excited. I want to play Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 on stream. I'll probably end up doing Fallout 3 and 4 and all that, like, if they're easier, like, first, but we'll see. I'll see. Like, depending on what people say, I'm willing to do them all. Y'all let me know. Go! Fallout lore, baby!
Will bring about the master race.
Master!
One able to survive, or even
Thrive.
in the wasteland. As long as there are differences, we will
Tear ourselves apart!
fighting each other. We need one race,
Race!
one goal,
Goal!
one people to move forward to our destiny.
The Holy Flame, Dark God, Father of Hope. These are just a few of the many names
That
given
voice
to
is
the
freaking
Master,
terrifying.
But he wasn't always this way.
But
Before
it's
the
not
Great
just his
War,
voice, though.
a
It's
boy
multiple
by the
people's
name of
voices.
Richard
You'll
Moreau
understand, but,
escaped
like,
what appeared
Bro is
to
like
be
an
the end of the world,
amalgamation
surviving Armageddon
of
inside
different,
one of
of different
Vault-Tec's
things.
great
Not just
underground
people, but things.
shelters.
Whatever he could
His
consume.
time inside of Vault 8 would have been heaven compared to the horrors of the post-nuclear world. The giant mutated creatures, deadly levels of radiation, and bloodthirsty raiders seeking to fulfill their sadistic fantasies. Yet, there must have been trouble in paradise, as Richard was accused of murder and exiled from the vault. However, the details surrounding the crime remain a mystery. Banished from his home, Richard travelled south towards the coast and changed his name from Moreau to Grey in the hopes of starting a new life away from those who knew him. After a long journey, Richard found his calling at the Hub, a newly founded trading centre and settlement almost 400 miles away. With a new name and a new home, Richard quickly became one of the city's doctors, and for a time, things were normal.
If I'm not mistaken, this in particular should be taking place in California. I may be wrong about that, though.
Surprisingly, Richard was well liked by the community, quickly becoming good friends with most of the city's inhabitants. But one friendship stood above the rest. Harold, a caravan master and fellow wanderer.
Harold! If anyone here is a fan of Fallout 3, and you've played the mission where you go and you find a living tree, like an actual tree that like is alive and speaks to you, that's this dude. That is Harold.
Vault dweller from Vault 29 was one of Richard's, if not only true friend. Through their common background of life inside a vault, and the struggles of having to begin again gave them a connection most others didn't have. And this is where his story could have ended, if not for the ill-fated expedition to the military base that is Mariposa. Over the years, gangers, scavengers, and worst of all, mutated creatures had crept into the area and quickly became a scourge on the Hub,
what is that? It's like
masters,
two-headed
including Harold,
spider
to spare
human
no
scorpion
expense
doggo
on armed
thing.
guards in order to continue trading. But this was hemorrhaging money, and it was only
Oh, dude, one of my absolutely favorite freaking missions, which is the New Canaanites, like the freaking the caravan company, like DLC for Fallout New Vegas. the one where you have to like go and become a caravan guard. I thought that was a really freaking cool like intro premise. You know, it was really dope. I love it. I would love to see a freaking like Fallout game where you're just a caravan guard crossing the Mojave or something. You know, it would be dope.
Only a matter of time before essential trade routes were deemed unreliable.
You could even make an horror game if you really wanted to.
With
The
his caravan
Cazadores, the
outfit,
freaking
went to Richard with a
Death
proposition to act as the group's doctor while they tracked down the source of the mutants and put an end to them. Being Harold's friend, he accepted, and together, along with Francine and Mark, two others that Harold trusted, they set off in search of the mutants' home and found it, northwest of the hub, deep into the Californian Central Valley. What happened to these other three is a story for another time, but deep inside the base, beyond waves of mutants and still functioning robots, a crane struck Richard, knocking him unconscious and into a vat of FEV. FEV being an artificial virus with the ability to force changes to an organism's genes and observable traits.
the forward evolution, the forward future evolution, forced evolutionary virus. It's the same exact virus that is pretty much still in every super mutant in Fallout, and overall is the main reason why their mutation So IRL radiation cannot do the mutations that happen in Fallout. It's because of FEV that any super mutants, death claws, it's the only reason why all these mutations are possible. As opposed to IRL, where radiation would just destroy your molecular cells. It would destroy you
Richard
on a molecular
miraculously
level.
awoke before the green slime, as he called it.
Is that the right way to
could
say that?
drown him.
Molecular level?
Pulling himself to safety, he crawled to the control room and waited to die. The pain he was in was excruciating, and to distract his troubled mind, he began writing a diary. One of the first things he wrote about was his friend, Harold, and how he must have been killed, otherwise he would have helped him by now. We of course know that Harold hadn't been killed and had instead escaped the facility. Richard was now alone, wrecked with pain and slowly changing. In time the pain subsided, yet he was unable to walk, and now his skin festered and peeled, bubbling in certain areas and expelling a green mucus-like substance. But at least the pain was now tolerable. The killer robot
Bro was freaking... Ugh. Bro was spitting out green goo from his legs and
had
stuff.
also been hacked and shut off, meaning for the time being he was safe, but still he continued to change. Dragging his body from the control room, he passed out from exhaustion and awoke feeling stronger. Now he was able to walk, although toddle would have been more accurate, and things around him seemed to be getting smaller. Soon he found himself eating rats, but not by choice. Without knowing how or why, a tendril would spring from his stomach and envelop the creatures. Pulling them in, his body would open and the creature would be absorbed.
His body would open. He literally became the Thing, bro. He actually became the Thing.
Learned that he could feel its mind, although he was unsure if that was real, as he was unable to determine.
So that's the trippy part. He ate a rat and was able to learn the knowledge the rat had. But being a rat, it doesn't have a whole lot of knowledge. You get me?
A distinguishable difference
That's
between
why he has multiple
reality and
voices.
hallucination.
It's a
He
trippy
felt
thing, dude.
insane. Maybe he was. Maybe he was still lying beside the vat of FEV dying. Or maybe he now had the ability to absorb living creatures, and as an extension of that, their consciousness. The more creatures
Maybe not
Richard
consciousness.
consumed, the greater
Who knows,
his
right?
mind became. With
But
very little effort, he could understand the most
Definitely
complex
learned,
philosophical
got their
questions.
knowledge, I feel like.
In his words, the many layers of artifice had been stripped away, having been baptized in green goo and reborn. He wondered what would happen if the rats he had been consuming would have been dipped instead. Would they too gain a greater awareness and appreciation for their surroundings? Experimenting, he learned that they did in fact become smarter, and not only that, but dipping creatures at the same time would merge them together into something new. And this is where Richard's mind really began to think. Here he had taken two creatures, sometimes dogs and rats, animals that typically didn't get along, and here they were cooperating. Perhaps this was the future, a coming together, a unification of harmony. And so Richard continued to dip creatures and consume their consciousness, all the while waiting for something a little more significant to come along. After waiting patiently for who knows how long, an explorer finally made their way into Mariposa, but before Richard could seize them for experimental purposes, tendrils once more sprang forth, wrapping around their body and pulling them into his own, where they became one.
Bro, so mentally he wanted to dip this human and experiment with him, but his freaking body instinctually, and like that's the question, because he ate the rat instinctually. So it's like, does his body have its own consciousness now? You get me? It's kind of weird, but now the same thing happens. He like subconsciously eats the freaking, like wants to eat the person. But I'm wondering if like the rat, does that mean the rat's consciousness is also in there? Or maybe it's just his consciousness and it's just that his body itself has an instinctual reaction now.
He notes their repulsive mind was primitive in comparison to his own, and next time he would be more careful. He needed to take control. While waiting for others to come along, he began modifying himself with injections of FEV, which increased his powers and abilities, one of which allowed his nervous system to connect with computers and learn the information within, which is what he did with the base's computers.
Bro, that is some wild... This is like... Literally, this is like if the thing actually was able to get out into the world. You feel me? And like, run amok.
Everything the researchers knew about the forced evolutionary virus was now his, and it allowed him to take his experiments and self-testing even further. Eventually, others did come to Mariposa, although much like that first individual, they too were disappointing. When dipped, they didn't seem to mutate correctly, not like he had. Instead, they transformed into very large and very stupid mutants, most of whom remembered nothing about their past, while others simply died from complications. With no other use for these failures, Richard consumed them and continued to strive for a better mutant. And after discovering one important factor, that the lower the subject's level of radiation damage, the greater the chance of a successful conversion. A mutant, both powerful and intelligent, was made. They too were assimilated, and to Richard their mind was delectable. Until now, the minds he had assimilated were meaningless in comparison, tossed to the back of his consciousness to be forgotten. But this new mind was far greater, and with it a hive mind was created, a combination of consciousness coming together to create the Master. Even with his breakthrough, there still seemed to be some underlying factor that
So that means that... I don't know, so does that mean he's like pushing the weaker consciousness back? You know? Like that's freaking wild, dude.
Interfered with the conversion
or does he
process,
have full control of that other consciousness?
Variable that determined whether a mutant lived or died. After some time, a mutant emerged.
Or maybe even at that point, the consciousness of Richard and the consciousness of the freshly born super mutant became one entity, a new entity, so to speak, and that's the Master.
That's possessing the greatest level of intelligence yet. The Lieutenant.
Oh, this is excellent. You know, I actually doubted my officers when they said they'd captured a prime normal. It is so nice to see you.
This highly intelligent mutant suggested there could be a secondary reason as to why not all humans successfully mutate. Reviewing all available data, it became clear that the West-Tec research facility where the FEV originated from had been targeted by invading forces and directly hit by a nuke, which cracked the facility like a giant egg. FEV escaped into the atmosphere, where it mixed with radiation to create something known as mutated FEV. This mutated virus fell to the Earth, giving anyone it came into contact with some level of inoculation to other sources of FEV. This immunity was the leading cause of failure. The pure FEV at Mariposa couldn't reliably mutate infected humans exposed to the mutated FEV.
And effectively, yeah, the nuke that hit the freaking base launched all that freaking FEV everywhere, dude. Mixed with the radiation, mixed with the weather, acid rain, all that stuff. Basically, he started putting it into the circulation of the atmosphere. And everyone on the surface world was granted this immunity from birth. And it's in their DNA, it's in their genes. Which is why a vault dweller in the future becomes it becomes a freaking resource. So much so that in Fallout 4, they have to literally kidnap your freaking baby, from a freaking cryo fridge, in order to, have a pure human DNA. It's freaking wild, dude.
Instead of successfully mutating, the subject would experience seizures. Their internal organs would mutate sporadically before failing, leading to a very painful death. Knowing the secret to creating
but
a
it's
successful
also what
mutant,
effectively
the master
led to the
waited,
ability of
hoping to one
all
day
these different
find a source
crazy
of humans
animal mutations to
unaffected
actually
by
happen
mutated
too.
FEV, while slowly
cows
building
have
up a
two
group
heads.
of mutants from what was available until there was
Why
enough
there's,
for them to be
coyote,
sent out to
rattlesnake
communities
hybrids.
in the area where they would capture unsuspecting locals, hauling them off to be converted to join the ranks of Unity. Progress was painstakingly slow due to the limited supply of humans they could draw from, but over the course of 30 years, Unity had grown into a small force of super mutants. But things had stagnated, and the Great Winter of
look how cool that all
2130
looks.
convinced the Master that in order for his plan to succeed, he would need to move to a more populated area. This winter had many new caravans cropping up, which allowed the Master to expand his hunting ground, with entire groups of travelling merchants and their guards taken in one fell swoop. There were no witnesses left behind, ensuring secrecy, and the settlements who did not see their caravans again thought raiders or even monsters had taken them, which isn't all that far from the truth. Years would pass, their numbers would grow, and the Master found his mobile body slowly losing the ability to move. He needed to relocate before the opportunity to do so was taken from him. He decided to split his force. One half would continue to capture and convert humans under the leadership of the Lieutenant. The other would seek out a new home, a unification center where he could reside, a place where he could feed and grow until peace and unity had been brought to California. While searching...
Bro, think about how wild that is. He knew he was gonna be immobile at a certain point. So he had to, become... this is actual hive mind. Freaking... Bro's evolving.
For a new home,
Actively
Unity
evolving.
came across a group of cultists led by an ex-Ripper named Morpheus. Morpheus was brought to the Master and at the promise of power decided to cooperate, acting as the human presence of Unity, to act as spies within the region while encouraging others through propaganda to willingly join the Holy Flame. But it would be quite a few more years until that would happen. During their search for a unification center, the cultists discovered a vault beneath a rundown building. It was a demonstration vault belonging to Vault-Tec, but it was still operational. The Master, having come from a vault during his human years, knew how safe they could be, and it was the perfect location where he could grow fat and happy while commanding his forces. Soon the cultists had restored the building above the vault to working order, and then they began wearing purple robes and calling themselves the Children of the Cathedral and spreading word of their new master.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't this the precursor to the Children of Adam later on?
Unexpectedly, the demonstration vault had a wealth of information, including the location of other vaults. Knowing that these vaults were likely filled with people who should by all means be free of mutated FEV, was enticing. Dipping these prime normals, as they would soon be called, would provide Unity with some of the most powerful and intelligent mutants imaginable. And it was these prime normals, among others who had minimal mutated FEV exposure, that would go on to become the Nightkin, Unity's finest super mutants who...
And one thing that we have to remember as well is that the reason why all the super mutants, or at least the vast majority, there is one in particular who's a bit of a unique specimen, at least in DC, in Washington DC, in Fallout 3, the reason why all those super mutants are like super aggro is because they have a different version of the FEV that was created over there in order to like expand their reach.
Who oversaw the actions of the children, sticking to the shadows and using
but
stealth
we all know
boys
that
to remain
Fox
undetected.
is actually one of the super mutants
would
who,
receive their
even with
orders,
their version
not
of FEV,
face-to-face
was
or
able to
through another
maintain
mutant, but
his
from
mental
the master
faculties.
directly through telepathy, a beneficial side effect of his FEV experiments. This psychic power allowed him to penetrate the minds of others, the radius of which was so powerful that most humans couldn't get close to him without a psychic nullifier, lest they go insane. Super mutants were soon sent by the Master to investigate these vaults, capturing as many dwellers as they possibly could before converting them, but not all missions were successful. One group of mutants were sent to investigate Vault 12 in Bakersfield, but met resistance in the form of ghouls. Many of the pre-war residents of Bakersfield were lucky enough to be given a spot inside Vault 12, but the vault door failed to seal and radiation contaminated the residents, transforming them into...
That sucks! So you freaking go into your bunker, and it doesn't even freaking cover the radiation.
Ghouls. These, of course, were unusable to the Master, as their DNA was well beyond saving. Not wanting the mission to be a total
I remember
loss,
the VAT system,
Master
the VAT
had a
system being
ceasefire
so
with
freaking...
Set, the ghoul leader, and installed a small
Like, it was
team of
revolutionary
super
to me,
mutants
dude.
led by Harry to guard the watershed, as all people needed water, and normals would likely find their way to it, only to be captured and added to the ranks of Unity. And so Unity continued to grow. Vaults were targeted, prime normals were converted, Morpheus and his children enticed the downtrodden and vulnerable into cooperating, while the unseen Nightkin supervised from the shadows. But that didn't mean people weren't getting suspicious, namely the followers of the Apocalypse, who installed their own spies within the cathedral to learn more about the truth. The Master also...
The followers of the Apocalypse, if I'm not mistaken, are basically like badass doctors. Like, they're like doctors that like go the extra... They're like literally imagine if like a bunch of doctors and scientists got together and like, but we're also badasses, you know? And that's like their whole deal. Freaking dope. Love those dudes. If they're the ones that I remember. Though, and at least in Fallout New Vegas, they did not they were a lot less badass. Still badass, like still cool people for sure, but like they weren't like hero material, you know? Like they were more like we need help material. You know, we need to give you a couple of side missions because we can't do this on our own. You know, we're looking for
demonstration vault,
donations.
Becoming a part of it, the FEV experiments continued, both on himself and a small group of humans creating other psychers, along with varying centaurs to act as watchdogs, as well as incorporating other mutants from Mariposa. All that was useful was to be used to ensure success. It seemed as if the expansion of Unity was inevitable. That was until a water chip within Vault 13 broke, and a Vault Dweller was sent into the wasteland by Overseer Jacoran to retrieve a replacement. Through their travels, they discovered a water chip at Necropolis, the current name of Bakersfield, and managed to strike a...
Oh, and that water chip is the Gek, the one from Fallout 3, that you pretty much need to, like, get in order to provide water to DC.
Deal with the ghouls, but after saving the vault from one threat, they learnt of another.
As long as someone is creating hostile mutants at this rate, the Vault's safety is at stake. Find and destroy this lab as soon as you can.
The Master's plan was nearing completion. Unity was almost strong enough to begin taking California, unifying all within under one banner, when he received word that Mariposa and the vats of FEV and the Lieutenant had all been lost to the Vault Dweller and a small team of crack assault paladins. This loss was devastating, but as far as the Master knew, it was only a matter of time until the super mutants bred and replenished Unity's numbers back to full force. And then, as if summoned, the Vault Dweller made their way to the cathedral, assisted by follower invaders, and descended into the vault itself.
Bro, the Vault Dweller's like this legendary entity that just appears in the apocalypse, dude. I freaking love it. So I freaking love everything about this series. I'm such a freaking, I love it.
To the very
I love
hallway,
Fallout so much,
the
dude.
corridor of revulsion, where the Master resided. We aren't certain why the vault and the cathedral exploded. Some would say the Vault Dweller detonated a nuke that the Master had been keeping as a failsafe in case he was overrun. Others think an autopsy report from the Brotherhood of Steel confirmed the mutants to be sterile, leading to the Master terminating the entire plan. Or perhaps he was killed in combat and as a final scorn against humanity, armed the nuke himself. Either way, the Master was enveloped in a ball of flames, the cathedral too, and Unity was left leaderless. Without a way to replenish their numbers, they drifted apart. Those remaining were left to fend for themselves. The Brotherhood of Steel would prove to be the final blow to Unity, driving those left away from California. Some of the stragglers banded together with a hatred for humans. Others attempted to live alongside them, while few, including Marcus, another great mutant, created new settlements where all were welcome no matter their form. While the Master may be gone, he is certainly not forgotten. Some
really cool place, and you actually get one of the best followers in Fallout New Vegas here.
Knew of him during his time as a man still speak fondly of him, as do those he created. And while his grand plan never came to fruition, I'm sure he would be proud of those he made that strive for peace, because in some twisted way, that is all the Master really wanted. A world where differences were cast aside and all living things cooperated in unison. Be sure to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already for more Fallout content. If there's anything you would like to see, he really was the thing,
trying to just consume everything and become one.
With that said,
thank you,
as always, for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.
I don't even know. He wanted to make like the perfect entity, the perfect being, and then consume it, then eat it. The perfect dish. He was actually just gonna cook all of humanity into the perfect omelette du fromage. Freaking great video, my dude. So Anonymous, I'm gonna subscribe. Hold on now.
V.
And I'm gonna share this on the Discord for y'all to check out as well, my dudes. Thank you so much, Primates, for watching this all the way to the end. Also, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as hit the little bell for a rainbow explosion that will go ahead and notify you every single time we go live or put out new content. Thank you so much, goodbye, and thanks for swinging by.